So what happens next? We did it. We made it to the crucial year of 1944. Now we enjoy the +3 modifiers for every air-naval combat in which US air units or carrier units participate. Now it's time for the comeback. Now we've got a proper navy to continue our conquest. Now the Japanese hand has been reduced. He will be drawing 5 cards unless we roll anything but a 9, in which case he will be drawing 4. So we're good to go. We're good to continue our conquest. The Japanese infantry has been severely hammered. He's been left with very few ground replacements, but his air forces and navy is very much intact. Maybe this is a good strategy for you guys to follow. Just destroy Japanese armies and leave the air and naval units for 1944 and 1945, where you have the advantage in air naval combat. Do you think we can do it? I'm not sure. Now that being said, the clock is ticking. Within just 5 turns, and against all odds and all Japanese delaying actions and nasty cards and defenses, we have to push. We have to grab resources and not lose the political will due to conquest of war. Let's not forget the Japanese political will cards have yet to show up, and hopefully reach close enough to Japan to subsequently amphibiously invade it, and by the end of turn 12 have conquered all of the hexes of Honshu. Or alternatively, withstand the Tojo resigns and play Soviets invade Manchuria and succeed on all strategic bombings against the +1 modifier of high altitude interceptors and capture all resources of the map. Now I shall remind you, we are still in inter-service rivalry, so these are just distant dreams for now. And I shall also remind you that all of our army's units have been sent to Europe. They will enter as late as 1945, 3 turns later. So I don't know how exactly are we going to win the Pacific War, but one thing is for sure, Hitler is gonna suffer. Yeah, I said it. So, Japanese replacements. Now, Jules is correct in the regard that these units are supplied by land, and because this is a land supply, we have also got to check whether this one is supply eligible. And to be honest, this is not supply eligible by sea, because of this unneutralized the zone of influence here. But then if we look at the movement points by land, it would be half, then 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. And then we would stop here because of the presence of allied units. So actually this is not correct. This port is not supply eligible, so these units should be out of supply. But anyway, it will not matter a whole lot, since he will be placing his reinforcements here and re-establishing his zone of influence. So he's placing an army in Saigon as well, and then Taiho onto Manila. Lastly, one more AF onto Hanoi. So these are some stronger reinforcements, and this is what we will have to fight against. Actually 5 reinforcements total, including that one here. Now time for our replacements. It's an even turn, so we get 2 naval replacements, 5 air and 2 ground. So the Siak LRB restored to full strength in the eliminated and then placed back at Akyab. Stacking issues are fixed here, I say. So we've also got the New Zealander division, which has been eliminated from the previous operations, and we are placing it back at Kepang to possibly help a future expansion into Indochina, ideally without having to spend our marines and possibly lose political will because of losing those. Ideally we want to use these Commonwealth units for our further conquests. Now on Shilashap, we are restoring Washington to full strength, and we are also restoring Bunker Hill onto Admiralty Islands. So you will notice that now we've got a fair lot of carriers on our side, and we would ideally like to combine those with some strong battleships, the likes of Washington, to boost our attack strength. So as for air replacements, we are replacing the one in Dhaka and the other long-range bomber, and we get one amphibious shipping point. So Japanese replacements, and I will remind you he has an unusual lot of replacements as well. 2 naval replacements because of carrier conversions, 3 air replacements because of flight instructors. So let's see what is going on. 1 naval replacement to restore Yamato, which is at Batavia. Now he's placing 1 eliminated Japanese ground unit onto Singapore, which brings him down to just 1 Japanese division available. He's got 1 ground replacement, and that's it. he will be playing with the rest of units that he's got on the map for the rest of the game. Now, time for the submarines. Let's hope not for a 9. Cool. He's losing one amphibious shipping point, and he's getting his second pass and just 4 cards. And of course, he's not preempting me. Now, there's an issue, though. I will be drawing 7 cards, but because of how strained we were at the previous turn, I have not managed to play a future offensive card, so it will be 7 cards total, against actually 4 Japanese cards, plus 1 in the future offensive, plus his 2 passes, so he will probably have the last word in this turn. So this means 2 things. First of all, our surprise will not be guaranteed in the end. He might save some reaction card till the end. And second of all, if he's got a Japanese card that reduces political will, then we will not be able to restore it on our last card play, if able otherwise. So, we are drawing our 7 cards hand, and this includes a war in Europe, not bad, Australian Coast Watchers, but this is an intelligent card that can only actually be used if Japanese air naval units are activated. So if he just stays put and does not activate air naval units for an offensive, then we cannot play it. Then we got Operation Liliput, a very situational card, but it's an 1 OC, so maybe we can sneak some surprise in. And then 2 hefty military events. Then Chennault, which is very good for our CBI situation. And then the Soviets invade Manchuria. So what is this card? For this to be played as an event, there has to be Tojo resigned. And in one hand we want Tojo to resign sooner than later to allow this card to be played. But on the other hand, because of our political will being 0, this is probably not a wish that we would like to be granted that much soon. So if we play this card as an OC, because Tojo has not been played, then we will cause a reshuffle to our deck. But this diminishes the chance of this card being redrawn again when we most need that. I will remind you that the problems of political will are mostly solved starting turn 9, because this thing starts at turn 9, the strategic bombing. And this will most likely succeed, and this will gain us some political will, much needed. So if we were a little more patient as drawing Soviets invade Manchuria, if this could wait until turn 9, we might have been able to withstand the Tojo and play the Soviets invade Manchuria without having lost the game in the process. There is one problem though. We need to secure a base close enough to Tokyo to bombard that. For the time being, we've got Marcus, and most likely we will keep occupying Marcus so that we can start strategically bombing Japan. And if worst comes to worst, we can bring our air units in China box, so we're good to go in that regard. So we're starting by Chennault, because we want to first push our way onto the CBI and hopefully force some strong reaction cards on his part before we push ahead with our Americans. So, we've got an air unit that is a special event reinforcements, and this is coming to Akiab. We've got the SIAC being activated, so with these newly acquired air units, let's use all those and conduct some attacks. So because this is an event card, we can conduct multiple attacks. Our 19 attack factors can attack this unit, and even on a half result, we are dealing a step of damage. We have to slowly start chipping away at his forces, or the remainder of his forces. Now, Battle B will be this one. We can bombard from long range with our combined total of 12 attack damage, and hopefully destroy that and pave the way to Medan. Now, the Japanese reaction to that is Mahatma Gandhi as an event. So, this is one of the special cards that can be played as a reaction. It adheres to its own rules. It can only be played in reaction to an offensive activated by the SIAC HQ, just like in this case. It will cancel this offensive, and we must reduce one full-strength Indian corps, and he draws one strategy card for that. So the upgrade is cancelled as well, because the offensive is fully cancelled. So long for our Chennault reinforcements. So we're back to where we started. Now, funny thing is that for 2 consecutive turns, 7 and 8, I have been trying to push in the most unusual of theaters for an allied player, and yet this is where the Japanese player keeps spending his reactions to delay me. Now, Japanese turn 1. He will play Central Force as an event. This means he can activate the Japanese air unit to immediately gain control of an unoccupied hex. Other than that, he can retreat, of course. I'm not sure he will spend the event, not bother. So, in terms of logistic value, it's got 5. He's activating the south headquarters, so 6 activations total. And just before I can take all these units out of supply again by eliminating Quantan, for example, he is retreating. The war is slowly being won by the Americans, and the Japanese adopted defensive posture, but if they delay us long enough, they will win the game. So, 4 units being recalled from the island of Java, 1 from the island of Celebes. Actually make that 5 for Java. So, Yamato back to Saigon, or rather Tainan. The army also to Tainan. The other army will defend Philippines from a possible reconquest and recapture of political will. Then the air forces move to Leyte, Philippines, and Balikpapan, and the last one moves to Kota Baru, Malaya. Redoing that to Miri, or Jolo, who knows. So, he's allowing me Java, and this leaves this army out of supply. Now, this means 1 free progress of war here in Batavia, and 1 relatively manageable one at Surabaya, also one at Bali Lombok. So, as you may notice, he does not have the power to keep competing the Allied onslaught anymore, so he will not mainly be pursuing the progress of war goals of reducing my political will. Probably this will be much easier now to achieve our political will, but we also have to be extra safe by not allowing him to finish us off with a Tokyo Rose or Tokyo Resign. So at this stage, the Allies should make sure that not only they fulfill the requirements of progress of war, but they also recapture some country and liberate it so that they gain even more political will. The most realistic goal at this point being Malaya. So if we can occupy Kuantan and Singapore, then Malaya will be liberated and we will gain 1 political will. This will be a good step back into the game. Let's see. 2 notes here. This is the price I pay for Mahatma Gandhi, reducing the Indian garrisons. And one other note is that I was afraid he would be using a ground assault overland advance onto Shilashap to possibly displace my naval units further back. But I don't know if this could be worth it, because I could again attack and possibly capture Batavia and cut his own units out of supply, so this would be risky to say the very least. So let's just grab that free political will or progress of war. We've got Operation Liliput, so that's a nice way of making some usage of it. This is a logistic value of 3 for the Southwest Pacific headquarters, so 5 activations in that case. We have the brigade from Palembang amphibiously assaulting here. This is 1 progress of war and 1 amphibious shipping point used. Then we've got that 1 brigade from Bangka, also the Australian Corps and another Australian Corps, and the 1 unit at Port Moresby. Now, if you wonder how I was able to do this, this is the only card that allows the Southwest Pacific HQ to also activate Australian ground units. So because of MacArthur's ability to command the Australians as well, I can move all these units and bring them closer to our further conquests. So this one will be moved to Darwin to possibly keep bashing its head onto the walls that is Kendari and Makassar. The other one will be moved to Shilashap, the strong one, to possibly invade Malaya at some point. The thing is, I'm not sure this is in supply, in range of Darwin. If we count the hexes, this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I should regret this move really soon. And I'm right now fixing that mistake, which is instead we move these 3rd Marine divisions onto here by sea invasion. So this is 1 more amphibious shipping points. They are ones that will probably manage to capture Surabaya later on. And this corps will instead land at Kendari. So this is 2 more amphibious shipping points, which now we've got a plethora of, and we're capturing 1 more progress of war hex. Actually redone this one. We don't have to bother with Surabaya right now. We will just amphibiously invade Bali and capture 1 more progress of war hex. We don't have to mess with the Japanese army just yet. He's out of supply. We will deal with him later. Right now let's secure some easier progress of war. Japanese player is passing. So time for Allied card play number 3. These are some nice points of the game where the gameplay is accelerated when everything is clear as for what has to be done. So, we have opted for playing Soviets invade Manchuria sooner than later. So, if the Japanese end up playing Tojo resigns later in that turn, this will mean we will have forfeited our chance to play this card as an event, but this will be the least of our troubles because our political will go deep down, and we would rather need to play all of our cards as operation to cling on to our last hope of liberating one country, like Malaya. So I would not regret playing this card as operations early in that turn. So, Southwest Pacific is again activated, and we've got Intrepid moving here, as well as New Jersey and Franklin and Washington being activated, as well as Essex, which is at Shilashap. And also we've got Bataan being activated from Biak, regretting the activation of Essex. So, Taluk Betung will attack Manila, along with Intrepid, along with Franklin, and along with Washington. So, now that we have acquired some strong navy at long last, it's time to waste it. I mean, attack the Japanese with that. So they've got a hefty pile of units here, and the later the game goes on, the Japanese would rather prefer to split their forces, one at its hex, projecting Zoids here and there, protecting their ground garrisons, and hopefully forcing us to take many battle hexes to proceed through. So this is an exception. There is Taiho and there is Takao, so I wouldn't mind fully destroying those in a single operations card. Bataan will also join the fight. There is one problem though, which you will encounter really soon. And let's see what I mean by that. Let's see his intel roll. This is a 7, which means since our card was at 3 and we entered this Zoe, this means surprise. Still, there's these things that are called kamikaze attacks, and these can be used when the battle is taking place within 11 hexes of Tokyo. So ideally, we would like to have been more careful with those attacks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So what historically happened is that when the Americans started invading Philippines, the Japanese were desperate and started launching their kamikaze counterattacks in order to sacrifice some air forces in order to destroy the American naval forces, send it packing at the bottom of the sea. So this is precisely what is going to happen to us now, because he will reduce this one unit in order to destroy Intrepid, or rather reduce it, and reduce Franklin as well. So, anyways, the result will be still a 1 times result, because if you notice, we've got the +3 for 1943 and the +3 for surprise, so it's a not a 1 result. The only difference that could be made would be a critical, but I doubt we even need a critical. Actually, what we need is 2 times 12 and 2 times 10 in order to destroy this everything. So a total of like 44, which we have easily got at this fight. So we're attacking first, we eliminate everything, and we're repositioning our units. Back to Admiralty Islands we go, in range of both the HQs in question. Just a minor fix, sending that card, Sandcrab Cottage, which ended up not being used as an event. So this is not removed from play, this goes to the discard, so we may end up redrawing that after the Soviets invade Manchuria reshuffle. Japanese card play number 3. He's drawing his bonus card for the kamikaze attack, and he passes. Again, not a whole lot to do. He's waiting for us to make the first move. So just reminding you that each player is allowed up to 3 drawn cards per turn. So since he has drawn 1 card for Gandhi and 1 card for the kamikaze, I can keep forcing reaction cards that at some point he will not be rewarded his bonus draws, so at least that will hurt him. So now we're playing Operation Flintlock as an event. 8 logistic value if US Central Pacific, follow others 4. So maybe this is just maybe the time to revisit the Pacific Ocean and see what beautiful kind of species live there. So we managed to post-battle movement a whole lot of naval assets onto that theater, so now maybe Mr. Nimitz can make some good use of those. So 11 activations. Still, we're under inter-service rivalry. Nimitz and MacArthur have not been talking since 1941. It makes sense, considering how pitiful the progress of Nimitz has been through the Central Pacific. So, only blue stuff again, only naval units. The thing is, I was intending to use all these Marines to occupy these islands and achieve some progress of war and gradually push the Japanese back. But this is one of the rare cases where it matters little, because we have actually managed to make good progress in all other theaters of the war but the Central Pacific. So this very much looks like a wasteland of distant islands by now. However, starting 1944, because of our naval advantage, maybe we can inflict many losses to deter these units from being redeployed onto Japan, and hopefully at some point start island hopping onto the islands that are close to Japan and start our final invasion of Japan. So all of these units are activated, 11 activations total. We've got North Carolina that goes here. We've got Massachusetts that goes here. Now this requires some efficiency, because at that point I want to declare many battles and take as much advantage of my +3 advantage as possible. And in each of these battles, I would ideally like to have the air parity, so as not to allow the Japanese to react their units out of the hex or bring many full-strength ranged units and deny me the casualties that I want to deal. So, Lexington and Washington will be attacking the Akagi and Aoba. Now this is where the heart of a Japanese player starts to pump faster, because he will have to withstand all these painful battles among these big-ass US operations, all these battles with an advantage of the Americans, and they have a lot of attack factors. So this might end up in many Japanese casualties and the quick reduction of what so far looked to be an infinite amount of Japanese air forces and navy. So, okay, Bunker Hill will attack there, it's got 10 factors to eliminate these 10. This one, Franklin, will attack here to eliminate those 10 as well. So, it's 9 battles total with 11 activations. As much as we can, we have tried to assign some ranged units, namely some carriers, with our naval units in most battles, so as to make sure we make the most value out of those. Now again, there are some maths as to which unit could react where and how many factors the Japanese player would be able to bring in and possibly reduce our unit. So for example, New Jersey, I have brought that here, so that if he activates the unit, he has to move it out of the hex, but this would waste one of his possible activations. And if he doesn't, New Jersey is more than enough to deal damage onto that one aeroplane. But even if I don't, he needs to bring some reinforcements before he can deal any damage onto my New Jersey. And there's a lot of stuff going on of that sort. Anyway, so his intel is 1. He can react, and that's for sure. Because if it was a surprise, this would mean all these things would go down to the bottom of the sea, or at least most of them. So we've got Mr. Ozawa with like 5 activations. He's got Yamato and the air forces from Hanoi and the air forces from Apari, the ones from Davao and the ones from Taihoku. So he's counter-attacking with the best of his strength. And let's see how he does that. Yamato moves to Saigon to protect that one airplane, so these are the delaying actions that I have been talking about. I mean, it may look simple at some point, but it's never that simple. We have the attack factors to eliminate the Japanese units, and we've got the +3 to bolster that, but nobody said we will be able to target that if he brings full strength units in. So after all these battles, the results may end up being meager, and we may need many more offensives like this one in order to achieve some actual gains. All in all, our job will start becoming much easier when he starts running out of these full strength units. We have to first reduce all of those so that they are not able to shield the reduced allies anymore. So we've also got that Air Force joining this one battle here. We've got this one Air Force joining this one battle here, or rather this one here, change his mind. And this one will join this one battle. Lastly, this one from Apari will make a round trip and reinforce battle H as well. And another little surprise, one more kamikaze attack. What else would we ever expect? Whenever the Allies reach Philippines or the outskirts of Japan, the Japanese get crazy with those kamikaze attacks, given that they are lucky enough to have drawn those at this stage of the game. So they're drawing a Japanese bonus card for their kamikaze. They're now up to 3 drawn cards, and the kamikaze will be from Ulithi. It will suffer a step loss in order to sink Lexington, which will leave Washington on its own against Akagi and Aoba. So that's one very effective delaying action. Now I don't have the air parity if, for example, Akagi left the hex, but I don't think he had the activations to do so. So moving on. However, he is reducing Washington as well, because this is a total of 2 naval steps. So reducing 1 air unit for 2 naval steps. So now Washington is insufficient to deal any damage to Akagi and Aoba, and it might even be eliminated. No, scratch that, it can. They have a combined strength of 15 against 16. So let's see how this all eventuates. Battle A, Cowpens versus the Ryujo. I'm rolling a 2, which is boosted up to 5, but no more than that. So it is still a half result, which is insufficient to kill Ryujo. So this battle is considered as never taken. Nothing happened. Battle B, Washington vs his units. I'm rolling a half result, which is not bolstered to a full times result because our carrier for some reason was destroyed, so we don't have any carriers in that fight. And he's rolling a full times result, so Washington is down to the depths. Or no, he's only at 15, we just said that. Now, Battle C, Massachusetts and San Jacinto with a bonus of 3 against these air forces. Here we can eliminate it at long last, and he's rolling a half result which does nothing. Battle D, Carolina versus the air forces. We are rolling a 5, in which case it will not go up, so his air force survives, and he's rolling a full times result which does nothing. Then Battle E, New Jersey versus the air forces. I'm rolling a quarter result, so nothing to achieve here either. Nothing on his part either. So far in 5 battles we have been paying some visits to the Japanese forces, greeted, opened up some guns, but nothing more than that. We are returning empty-handed as we came. Let's see what happens to the rest of the fights. Battle F, Intrepid versus Yamato and the air forces. We are rolling a 2 again, nothing to achieve here. And he's rolling a full times result, so our Intrepid goes to the depths of the sea. Now Battle G, Bataan versus Mogami. Here we're rolling a full times result, where we needed it the least, since even a 3 would mean a full times result and would eliminate Mogami without any danger of retaliation. Oh, scratch that, there was that air forces, so we have to reduce that first. So Mogami will have to wait for another battle. And now on to Battle 8, 3 air units of his against our Franklin. We roll a 0, nothing to achieve here as well. And he's rolling a quarter result, so he's 24, 28, he's quartered down to 7. No result on his part either. Now, Battle I, my Bunker Hill versus his air forces, both of his air forces. I'm rolling an 8 and he's rolling a 1, so I can just reduce his units without any retaliation, and that's his post-battle movement. Who could believe that? With that many naval forces we could ever achieve so little. I have lost count of how many of my die rolls were quarter results, but it might be he lost more air steps for his kamikaze than to my attacks. So next one, post-battle movement. I'm not correct in saying that Carolina's result is elevated to 8 in Battle D, because I had no carrier here, let's not forget about that. Now, one note I am making here is that it gets a bit ugly in Empire of the Sun when one side draws all the cards that they need early game on, and then they draw all the cards that they need for late game, because actually there are cards that you want to be drawing early as the Japanese and cards you want to be saving for late, and also for the Americans. There are cards that you want to be saving for late game and cards that you want to be drawing early game. So if the Japanese player, for example, grabs all the juicy military offensives earlier on, then he will be stacked with many reaction cards, the likes of Kamikaze and Submarines for the latter part of the game. But okay, that's the beauty, it offers a lot of replayability and we're happy to play around that. Now, let's see how our game progresses. So post-battle moving our plethora of naval units back onto Indochina and New Guinea. And time for the next Japanese card play. Now he's playing War in Europe Minor Axis Victory as operations. You will notice that it's of no effect in 1944 for the Japanese. The later the game goes, the less effective the War in Europe cards are for the Japanese. So he will have to play that for operations, much as he would like to drop it further down. So let's see what his Vicious Little attack will be. He's activating South Seas HQs, Yamato and the 13th Army from Manila, and Shokake from Leyte, and Akagi from Saipan, as well as Ryujo. So his plan was taking MacArthur out, because there's some issues with my zones of influence, leaving MacArthur without a zone of influence. So if, for example, he could bring his naval units there, of course he cannot take MacArthur out of supply because he can trace even to the south of the map. But he might be able to cut my lines of communications because, if he places some unneutralized here by attacking with his carrier here, then MacArthur will not be able to trace through sea. He will have to trace through land. And then if he brings some unit here, for example, to attack from range, then I will have to do a longer round trip. And then I will need more hexes to reach these units, given that he does not bring more zones of influence to attack my units from here or here. And this would severely hamper MacArthur's ability to activate units. So, of course, he can also block the western ports of Australia so that I cannot activate these units either. So it appears that I would still, all that said and done, have an activation line of 20 hexes that would be able to go through land and then continue through sea and reach these units in order to react and sink whatever carriers he's bringing onto the mix. So he will not be going for the attack after all. Just keep in mind, as both the Allies and the Japanese, that there are some cheap tricks like this one that you can do when the Allied player gets overextended that late in the game, because zones of influence can not only hamper supply but also lines of activation. So the headquarters may be supplied and the units may be supplied, but you also need lines of activation to be able to reach the units, to activate them in the first place. So according to Jules, he could do it if he had a good military event to do that. Now he will be moving his units onto Tainan and Busan and practically build up the defensive perimeter of Japan, preparing himself for the later stages of the game. With a few cards that he is left to play with, he wants to prepare his defense of Japan so that it takes me a whole lot of turns until I can even get there, let alone start invading. Now, in this nightmare of historical timeline for the American Navy, we still have to make some progress with many of our assets down at the bottom of the sea and many of our operations in our hand denied. So let's go ahead and use War in Europe Major Allied Victory as an event. So we are raising it up by 3. So at the contrary, the later the game goes, our War in Europe, so our Allied victories get stronger. So we are saving Europe from Hitler's yoke. We are liberating France here, that's what we do. So we're advancing it to -1, and maybe later on in the game we can raise it up to positive levels at long last and hopefully secure our reinforcements from Europe. So, Hitler is done. Let's see what we can do against Mr. Ozawa and Tojo and Hirohito and his gang. So this is visually the plan that he was willing to conduct. If he places these combinations of zones of influence, this does not, of course, hinder my activation path through land, but it does so through sea. So if he had a military event to possibly declare many battles, then he could pin the Admiralty Islands possibly by declaring a battle hex here so that I cannot activate these units out. And then he could possibly be able to bring some infantry escorted by naval units and invade Windham without any chance of reaction on my part. And Southwest Pacific would conduct emergency movements to leave the hex and Northampton would be dead. So all these units, or many of these units, would be out of supply because ANZAC would be able to supply the closest ones, but these ones will be out of supply, which would not be the end of the world, since we can always use the early HQ return to bring those to Australia. It is either Australia or Hawaii or India, so MacArthur would return, even in that case, at the expenditure of one card, but this would have been fun on the Japanese part. So he's playing a card as a future offensive. After a hell lot of kamikazes and reactions, he's playing a future offensive card and is left with 2 cards. Against our 2 again. So moving on real quick here. Playing a future offensive. This was the Australian Coast Watchers in the hopes that at some point we can be able to use it as a reaction later on in the game. So Japanese card play number 6. Patrick Harley has 3 OC for operations. This is a Chinese card in case he wanted to play for China, but in that case he will be playing that for operations. Actually, this is not an operations usage nor a China offensive. What he did was redeploying his combined fleet Ozawa out on the next turn. You will notice that all of his units are in supply, either through South Seas, which reaches all the way to here and here and here, and the rest of his units is in supply through South HQ, with the exception of that one guy in Surabaya. So he does not really need Ozawa at this stage where he is, and he will be redeploying to some more useful point. Let's see what he's planning to do with that, because he's a very experienced player and knows where he wants to place his HQs. Now at that point I thought he used it as a China offensive. Anyway, we will be playing Operation Dexterity as an event, with 5 logistic value for Southwest headquarters and 3 for all others. So let's see how we proceed. This is 7 activations with MacArthur. Let's see what can do with that. So this is our last card play. If he has one of the political will events, so be it. Otherwise, let's have some fun. 1 brigade activated in Batavia. Also Cowpens from Admiralty Islands. Bataan from Biak. Massachusetts at Batavia. And New Jersey at Kendari. Now, long is the time I wished for sneaky and diligent operations to achieve surprises. Now we want to use all of our naval assets as soon as possible and inflict lots of damage before time goes on. There's also San Jacinto to be activated from Kendari and Franklin from Shilesap. Now we move that brigade to Makassar to secure our last bit of progress of war. And if he's got a weather, of course, we are done for, because we will lose this progress of war. Now, Massachusetts is moved to attack Bangkok, these unprotected infantry units, because, you know what, I actually want to destroy both of air, naval and ground units alike. Like, I might leave those units for now, but this would end up becoming a problem later on, because he would transport those to Japan, and we eventually will have to invade Japan the way this game is progressing. So why not eliminating some ground steps if we can help it? So Kotabaru, Franklin moves here to attack the ground units as well. Now New Jersey is moving on to Jolo, and San Jacinto is providing his airplanes here to make for some +3 bonus and some air parity. Or maybe not. We're bringing Cowpens to attack here, because the trick here is not to give Ozawa the chance to interfere, because I still thought Ozawa was in Tokyo and he had played the previous card for China offensive, because Ozawa can reach from Kure all the way to here, so I want to avoid that. So Battle C is going to be against this one airplane, so no big deal. And Bataan will attack this one, so we want to declare as many battles as possible with our +3 and hopefully achieve some good results at long last. So Japanese reaction. He's correcting my China mistake, so his intel is 5, which means he can react to Operation Dexterity. So he'll be activating the South HQ, activating Yamato from Manila, and Hiei from Tainan, and this one air unit from Balikpapan, and Soryu from Busan, Korea. And he will be bringing Yamato to Saigon. At some point we will have to deal with Yamato, because this is troublesome and it reacts everywhere, and it shields his air units and it messes up our real progress. But because of his high defensive factor, I think this would be the last one we would like to mess up with, because right now we want to create many battles and destroy many units and leave Yamato for last. hopefully. So Hiei moves to Medan to join this battle D. Soryu moves here to join battle B, or rather battle D here. Hiei joins battle B. So let's see how this all eventuates. This one will be joining battle A. So let's resolve. In battle A, he's got these air forces that are shielding these ground units from my onslaught. And there are only one, which is amplified to a half result. So with a half result I can destroy this unit, and he's doing no damage. Now, battle B. We've got Cowpens versus this unit, so unless I roll a critical, he's safe. Not the same case for us though, because he's got a 21, so with his half result he can deal one step of damage onto Cowpens. So you see, even with all these assets, we are ending up with the short end of the trade in most cases, because he can play defensively and allocate his assets as he wishes to shield his units. The task of the attacker or the offensive player is always hard in this game. So we are on to battle C. We've got New Jersey plus San Jacinto against Yamato and this Air Force. Let's see. Here we roll a critical. But this critical, it allows us the chance to destroy this air unit without bothering with Yamato, so we've got the choice which one to eliminate. And he's got a full times result, which is 29, which means he can both reduce our New Jersey and eliminate our San Jacinto. So at least one less Zoe to worry about. Now, battle D. We've got Bataan against this Air Force and Soryu. And we're rolling another critical. And he's rolling a half times result. His half times result is enough to deal one step of damage to Bataan, and in our case we will be eliminating this one unit. So at least criticals save the day that time. So these are his post-battle moves, and we are proceeding with our own post-battle move. We are redeploying our units mostly back to their starting positions. And still there is this network of zones of influence that has to be dealt with sooner than later. Now, Japanese card plane, number 7, the last one. And luckily enough, he has not got Tokyo Rose or Tojo resign. Our political will is safe for now. Or is it? Will he try to mess up with our progress? He's playing the Guadalcanal evacuation for operations. So if it was an event, he could possibly evacuate a space that is out of supply and take the Japanese ground units there, the likes of Surabaya, for example. Instead, he's using it for operations, activating Yamato and this army, and Soryu, and Shokaku, and Hiei. So there's no end to his naval capabilities. Still, he doesn't want to try that. He wanted to invade Batavia while putting my stacks in Java and Sumatra out of supply, but it appears that we would have been able to react with the Anzac and send out the reinforcements. So he will indeed be playing that as an event, and he will be strategically moving this guy from Surabaya onto Seoul. So Jules here is correct to think that every step will count, and spoiler alert, every step will count in this game. He will need the last bit of ground forces he can master to defend Japan later on, because right now our navy is busy dying to the kamikazes and submarines. So let's see. No attrition at the end of the turn, and the game marker moves to turn 9. So we will be able to provide you some beautiful view of the strategic bombing of Japan. Let's light up the fireworks.